Hello and welcome everyone to Open Office Hours. So every month we break down different startup concepts to help you gain traction in the most important parts of your business. So today we're going to talk about simple ways that you can test demand for whether it's a new startup idea, or maybe it's like a brand new product, or maybe it's expanding new features that you have or a new offering within your current product offering. This is a great place to start. So we're going to just get started with testing demand with really simple concepts. My name is Jacob Miller. I'm the marketing and brand manager here at Headway, and I'm going to hand it off over to Andrew and Ryan, and they can introduce themselves next. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. So I'm Andrew Verboncouer, partner and CEO at Headway here, and we're excited to dig a little bit in first to our video and then open the floor for Q&A. So as you're watching, be thinking about how this applies to what you're working on and what questions you might have, but excited to dig in.
Ryan Hatch here. I run head of product here, run the product team at Headway. So super excited to jump into any questions you have around demand testing, getting validation from the market. Yeah, we'll talk to you in a little bit right after this video.
Awesome. So just to kind of give everyone an overview of how this is going to work, today we'll start with a short kind of video overview that we pre-recorded just to get through things really quickly. And so if you have questions while we're watching that together, please put your questions in the chat. So whether you're watching on YouTube or watching on LinkedIn, we can see those questions come in and we can go through those after the main presentation here. So we'd love to hear those from you. So this can be very helpful to you, especially within the context that you're maybe facing. So I'm going to hit play in this video and then we'll regroup and we'll go from there.
So today I want to talk about testing customer behavior and trying to figure out if there's demand for your idea. So as we look back to what Ryan talked about, we figured out who our customer would be. We also brought that forward and went and tried to interview our customers and see, are they the right people that we should target based on who we thought would value this? Did we uncover the right problems? Are we using the language that they would ultimately use? Using the decisions you made around your target segments and the customers you're looking to serve, and going from this general market opportunity into the primary research world where you're getting real stories from customers, you're understanding the struggles that they have, understanding how you can help them win. The next step from here, the next part in your journey is really taking all of that information, all of that insight, and figuring out how do you create a value proposition around it, and how do you go and actually test demand. So one important thing to note is that what people say they'll do and what they do are two different things. And so in your primary research, this is where a lot of founders get stuck. This is where they stop. They maybe do some problem discovery inside of that interview and ultimately are so excited about the vision they have for how they might change the world, or the product they might bring, their solution, their app, whatever it might be. They're so excited about it that they usually bring it up in those interviews and try to say, hey, since you're struggling with this, and they try to use that opportunity to sell, even though they haven't really crafted a value prop yet. And this is where we see a lot of people and a lot of founders stop, where they ask people, would you buy this? Hey, I know you're struggling with that, but what if I could solve that? Would you? And that kind of feels like the next evolution, the next step in the process. And it is. But when you do that, and when you stop there and customers say, yeah, I'm interested, you haven't really thought or worked through pricing at that point. You haven't crafted an offer that takes all of these problems and all of their perspectives and tries to push that forward into a solution. And you say, we're solving it because X, here's the benefits, here's the outcomes that you're going to get from this, here's the price point. And that's definitely an important part, but make sure that you follow through on this journey and don't stop at, hey, I have a bunch of people that said they would. Our goal in building businesses and building ventures is trying to test true demand and trying to actually validate or build evidence that somebody's willing to pay for this. And so, as I mentioned, what people say they'll do and what they actually do are two different things. So our job on this journey is to figure out, how do we go from would they buy to will they buy? And how do we bring them along that funnel? So there's usually three ways to test demand, or three common ways. Obviously, there's segments of this that go deeper, but the first one is money. So if we can get an exchange or a letter of intent or a purchase order or someone's credit card for a future purchase, we can understand that they have really high intent to buy and follow through. And that's something that you'll want to know as a business founder, that, hey, people are actually willing to pony up. And you've seen this in different ways through wait lists. You've seen this, I'm sure, maybe you've signed up for them, but you see this all the time. The other one is time. So is somebody willing to go beyond that initial discovery call with you, that primary research, those interviews, somebody willing to go beyond that and give you their time to tell you even more nuance for how they're solving their problem today, why they can't. The other one that you're looking at is reputation. And this is true for B2C companies. This is true for B2B companies, where you're trying to see is this problem valuable enough for someone to solve? Do they know other people that would be interested in a potential solution? And will they actually put their name on the line? And so you see all of these three things converge a lot on landing pages, where you might have a pre-order. You see Kickstarter is really successful with physical products and even digital products too. Time and reputation, that's all part of it, where there's this referral loop to try and figure out, is somebody motivated enough to solve it that they would pay for it, that they would give their time, or that they would put their name on the line and send an email, have a conversation with someone at work around getting them into. So as we look at bringing someone through and testing behavior, we like to refer to this pirate model of startup metrics made by Dave McClure from 500 Startups. And one thing that you'll note here is that the awareness is grayed out. This isn't important for early stage ventures because nobody's going to know you by name unless you have previous exits, have previous companies that you've started. No one's going to really know the next evolution or the next product idea that you're pursuing. And so we focus on the bottom part of this funnel. And when you look at this, we have acquisition. So can we acquire someone's interest on a landing page, their sign up? Can we activate them? And this goes beyond this demand testing into how you actually deliver for customers, where activation is getting someone's profile filled out, getting it actually implemented into someone's business or their life. Retention is making sure that we're creating this habit loop and really creating the behavior we want to ultimately bring users closer to the value that we can serve and we can deliver to them. The next one is referral and revenue. But when we look at early stage ventures, we often want to try and demand test earlier than that. We don't want to wait until the end to figure out if somebody would pay for this. So oftentimes when we launch these demand test campaigns for new ventures, we're looking at bringing up revenue and bringing up referral into part of that top of funnel. And so we're really trying to test what's here in acquisition. We're trying to test if we can acquire someone's interest. Will they sign up for a newsletter? Will they sign up for early access? The revenue part of that is for when you really test if someone will buy. And so the way that you can do this is by integrating Stripe, Samcart, any myriad of tools that allow you to collect someone's payment information now to bill them later, all really high signals. The other one that we want to test in this phase is referral. And so when you're thinking about crafting your offer, crafting your landing page, and doing demand testing, we're trying to figure out, one, can we acquire someone's interest? And that usually looks in the form of ads, which we'll look at now. That's headline copy. That's the images. That's what the body copy says in the app. Can you resonate and reach your customers to where they see that on Facebook or they see that on one of their platforms and they click through? And that's a good indicator of this top of funnel activity where you're saying, hey, this problem resonates or this solution resonates, depending on how you're phrasing it. And as you go beyond that, as I mentioned on the landing page, your landing page is bringing to life all of the different ideas, the problems, the benefits, all of the things that you're gathering from those primary interviews, where your customers are almost writing the copy for you. They're telling you their perspectives, they're telling you why they can't solve it today. And what you're trying to do is craft a solution that brings forward, or craft an offer that brings forward a solution where you're clearly positioned to solve that problem. So as we look at, some examples here of demand gen testing campaigns that we've run, it's about going to the market and channel testing and trying to figure out, can we acquire someone's interest to go from here's an ad on a network to they're on our landing page. And once they're on our landing page, can we get them to convert? How many people bounce right away? You're trying to measure the interest and essentially your funnel activity before you go and build your product. And this is really important because if you were to go build your product first, you would have no insight into the buying cycle, how people thought about your offer, the messaging, are you talking about it the right way? And that's really risky. And so when you're thinking about building your venture, whether that's building a business, For you, that's something that you're going to bootstrap in or lifestyle. You want to get to revenue quick. And if you think about the other side of that, which is VC funding, you want to get to revenue quick because you want to make sure that you're building traction that builds good business. Your business is going to be worth more. Investors are going to invest more, and you're going to keep more of the slice of the pie if you focus on getting customer and revenue traction early on.
Awesome stuff from Andrew here. So that little clip there is actually from a free video series that we created called Startup Foundations. I'll throw the link in the chat, but you can see the URL here. So headway.io/startup foundations. So if you're interested in more videos like that around just foundational concepts of launching a new startup or experimenting with new ideas, it's a great place to start. So awesome. So I'm going to hand it off over to Andrew and Ryan, and we can talk about what's next and other ways that we can think about demand testing.
Yeah. So I think, as we're talking through this, as Jacob mentioned, drop your questions in. Happy to dig in specifically to your use case and context. While we're doing that, Ryan, do you want to pull open just kind of that consideration and we can start chatting through some of those contexts?
Yeah, you bet. Before we get any questions, as questions come in, we'll answer them. So feel free to drop those in the chat. What we'll do until some of those pop up is just walk through some other additional kind of considerations when we think about market demand and demand testing, and making sure that what you're building actually matches the market. That's really what this is all about here, right? We all want to build products that matter, and that takes time, that takes iteration, that takes an evolution of your idea and of your product to match the market and kind of find where that sweet spot is and how to get them to pull it into their life, right? And that's we talk about this, Andrew, like that's a big change. You're asking someone to change, to leave something behind and pull you into their life. And that means doing something very different or different than what they're doing now, what they're used to do. So some context to start thinking about here is, if you have a new product or idea, and a lot of the stuff that Andrew was talking about in the video kind of related to these new product or new idea, new concept, and how do I know if they even like the idea or the concept or what's the value proposition? Another context to be an existing product. So if you're already VC funded, if you already have investor funding, we're gonna look at it and talk about different things. We're talking about funnels. We'll talk more about that. And also how you're going to be approaching demand testing is going to be different with B2C than it is with B2B. It's going to be different with how you're going to get those first conversations going, get in the market and actually pull some of these people in, right? If you're talking to executives, it's going to be different. You're not going to be able to pull those off of a pool as easy, a pool of survey candidates, let's say, or interview candidates. It's going to be harder to get those. So there's some really creative ways to get a hold of those people, to get them in a session so that you can get feedback on what you're building and if you're headed in the right direction. And that applies to whether you're a new or existing product. B2C, there's a whole bunch more tooling. It's a lot more straightforward to set up ads and paid ads, or maybe you have an existing product, you can pull people in off of your sales funnel or off of your marketing channels in for these conversations. So a lot of it's going to depend on the context you're in.
Yeah, I think it's really important there when you think about B2C, where you can test with a simple form, or you can test with Stripe or something where the decision maker is the person, the person purchasing is the decision maker. They're saying, yeah, I want to use this thing. I want to try it. You can, start to get some more commitment there if you're charging something. In a B2B context, there's likely, when you get to enterprise sales, there's lots of decision makers. There's more than just the person looking to buy it. I mean, there's a whole process that goes into it, especially, depending on the type of context and the depth of the platform or whatever you're trying to launch. So how you measure that, is important. That's where we talk about, and I know we'll get into a little bit here too, Ryan, but we talk about like using reputation. Like it's important in B2C when you think about viral loops and, people sharing and being, excited about the product. But it's important for B2B when you have an entry into a team and then try to get access to the decision makers or the CFO or whoever's writing the check to make a business case. There's different motivations there. So that context is really important.
Yeah, B2B sales are a lot more complex, which is what you're touching on, Andrew. And there's different strategies to get into those conversations and actually pull those people into a buying conversation. There's a lot of SDR work on outbound strategies and how to even, penetrate into those. We talk about some of those. On one route is to go high and then get referred low, right? So you go to the CEO and oh, you should talk to this person, and that CEO referral actually is a good thing, because it means the person's got to talk to you. They're being told to, as opposed to you can build a relationship and work your way up. But there's a lot more stakeholders in a B2B environment. Andrew's right about that, and that means you got your value proposition has to resonate with multiple people. So yeah, longer sales cycles. Let's touch base on some of the next stuff. So there's different risk types. We're talking about testing market demand, which a lot of times is desirability, and there's a lot of different ways to test for this. Again, it's going to depend on your context. Like Andrew's mentioning, if it's B2C and it's a new product, you can be doing some really cool stuff with new tools that are out there. Stripe, like Andrew mentioned, has done a lot of neat things where you can instantly add a checkout to your existing site, or even there's Stripe payment links, which allows you to basically spin up an entire store in just one link. So some really creative stuff that applies a lot of times to the B2C new product world. And Andrew, maybe you want to touch base on, hey, in the existing product world, what are some ways to test desirability?
Yeah, I mean, you have a couple there, like fake door, feature flags. As you think about adding to your product, you likely get these ideas from current customers or even competitors or something, and you're thinking about adding a new feature set, a new revenue stream potentially to your product, using fake doors and things that are able to have people click, recognize that intent. You're able to measure that on the back end. Maybe that books a call. You've likely been a part of processes like that where you book a call with somebody and they kind of dig in and learn more about it. And so we've used those both in full feature scenarios and also in questions we're trying to answer about the roadmap of, are people interested in seeing more stats about something specific? Are they interested in digging deeper? Should you spend more time going deep on a feature versus kind of fleshing out the rest of the flow? And you can gather some of that stuff in real time. And we've done that with other ways and other tools like Intercom, where you have like a more button and people go to see more, and you pop up a field and say, what did you expect to see here? Like, what are you looking for? And you try to collect that real-time information around new features and what else, people might be looking for.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's been in startups long enough begins to realize the question begins to be, man, what do we build next, right? There's a whole bunch of ideas coming from the sales team, a bunch of ideas coming from customer support. Your internal team has ideas. Your biggest customers have ideas, and it's like, do you let the whale win? There's a whole bunch of tension around where do we go? Where do we take this? What do we do next? And those are really hard questions. When you begin to realize how important those questions really are when you fail. And I've been in situations, if you've been in this space long enough to realize that, man, we built this thing. We spent like 3 to 6 months building this thing because the sales guys told us that this big customer, they would buy it if we had this, right? Oh yeah, let's go do that. Go build it. 3 months, 6 months, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then, they never bought, right? Or the people that did buy, they never ended up using it anyway. So, you really have to figure out what's worth doing, because everything you add to your product is debt. Everything is baggage. Everything needs maintenance. There's defects that there's a lot more regression testing. It becomes really complex to know. And not to mention, right, Andrew, like the user experience becomes a lot harder, not a lot thicker when there's more stuff going on, and you end up with this Salesforce type UI where it's just like totally overwhelming. And so how do we prevent that? You really need to back up and say, what is valuable? What is valuable to the customers that I'm going after? And we'll talk a little about customer segmentation and who that is. But you need to be able to test whether you're building a new product, you're coming out of the gate and you're asking a bigger question like, can this even be a business, and is the value prop even resonating? But you're struggling with a lot of the same questions, just in different context when you have an existing product, and you're wondering, oh, man, everyone's telling me a million different things. What do we actually build? Where do we actually invest, right? Because you're burning that runway every single time. You're burning VC expectations every time, and you have to be able to make decisions quickly. How do you do that? One of the best ways is to really get close to the market, right? And to really understand what they're hoping for. And like Andrew said in the video, what they say and what they do are different, right? So you want to be testing more. And in economics, there's a term called revealed preference. So if you look it up, revealed preference, it's very mathematical, but it's this idea that, like, we want to measure what people do, not what people just say, right? So we actually want to measure behavior. And that's why when we're talking desirability and, hey, would they do this or this, put it, like Andrew's saying, instead of spending 3 months building this feature, hey, if we put this button here, would they even go that next step in the journey, right? Mapping out that customer journey, what do we expect them to go do? And would they actually take that next step? Would they even click on this in the UI? And that's what a fake door is tempting them with something new, a new possibility. Do they care about that? People that click on that, you can go talk to them and have conversations about what they were hoping to see, what they were expecting, right, Andrew? Any more to talk about on that?
No, I think, as we mentioned before, it's clearer in B2C, but B2B, like healthcare, insurance, fintech, right? The position needs to change, right? Like when you're starting specifically from a new product, like we talked about in the previous slide, it's not about trying to pull wool over their eyes, because you'll never be able to pull enough wool over in like an enterprise deal. But you do need to really be clear about relationships, right? And think about, okay, well, if we're asking someone to buy something, what's a different way for us to get intent from the market and measure that demand and measure that actual need? And a lot of that is figuring out how to position your pilot program to be able to co-create alongside people to say, hey, we know you have this problem, we know the value of solving it, why don't you come and be a part of the 5 companies we're working with to actually bring this new thing to market? And right, you can get them to buy. You're never going to get them to buy off a landing page if you have a really long enterprise deal or things like that. So as you think about testing in heavily compliant spaces, it's finding those people that will, write that check, but be that partner, beyond just, saying that they're going to be a customer. Will they actually go through and give up almost a combination of all of those, right? Like say, hey, yeah, we see the vision for this. We want to buy into it. We want to co-create alongside of you. And for that, they're going to get some upside, right? They're going to get some sort of discount or some sort of something, maybe not in perpetuity, but for a long time to be a part of that. But that's how you're onto something from that perspective, where people are willing to say, like, yeah, we face this every day and we know like how big this problem is. We're willing to come in and kind of co-create and do that whole dance with you.
Yeah. And go ahead, Jacob.
I just want to jump in. We have a couple of comments coming. I just want to recognize folks that are tuning in. Just want to say welcome, James, Dave the Wave, and Z. James shared something I thought would be kind of interesting to talk through maybe. He just kind of shared, we have 2 major drawbacks. 1 is too many market segments, and 2 is too disruptive. So I'm assuming like just newer tech or newer solutions. Do either of you have any thoughts around like a good way to approach that when you have a lot of segments, or when you're like a newer type of solution? What are like good first steps, or maybe good first questions to ask that might be useful for him and his team?
Yeah, Andrew, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing obviously that reduces the complexity is just pick a segment to start with, pick a beachhead, right? Like try to force yourself to focus on one, because, as we mentioned in the video, and if you go through the series, the nuance and the context of, who you're selling to is going to be important. Like they're going to resonate with very specific things. If you try to speak too general to folks, you're going to dilute the message, you're going to dilute, the solution that you ultimately come up with. So even though your vision's really big, figuring out what your beachhead is, and that's a combination of who do you know the best, who do you have access to, who can you set up calls with, who can you, how do you position yourself in that market? So trying to use those different aspects to try and be to your advantage of, hey, what's going to give you more success or more chance of success? Is it kind of spraying and praying, or is it focusing on something you're really familiar with, you're really passionate about, you have ties into early customers perhaps? We like to think that, hey, if we serve everybody, we can have millions or billions of customers, and that could be true, but you have to start with one. So if you think about, hey, where's the easiest spot for me to get my first 5 customers? Could I name them? Could I write down the names of companies that I could reach out to and get connects into to be able to establish this? That would be kind of my first reaction to that is, hey, let's solidify a beachhead from a market segment standpoint and try to just create clarity around all the efforts. Otherwise, you kind of make a little bit of progress in a lot of different directions.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'll second that. The customer segmentation stuff, there's this temptation, right? We have this temptation where it's like, I have this idea and it's so, I think you're using the word like disruptive or transformative, right? This thing can be amazing. And you need that, right? You need that like reality distortion kind of as an entrepreneur to believe that this thing can be real, right? So like wanting to just float in this possibility is wonderful, and you need to have that enthusiasm that this thing can be legit and real and huge. I think the other challenge is that opens us up, and like we have a hard time narrowing in, right? And so, but you're going to need to, and one of the things that you saw in the video was, I think Andrew had up the triangle of the definition of an early adopter. So to narrow in, you're going to have to think about, hey, who's in the most pain, or who can I help the most? Where can I deliver the most value, right? Who's already shopping? Who's already trying to, stitch together alternative solutions or kind of like hack stuff together themselves? I think you mentioned healthcare, right? So like, who's trying to, I think I saw it in the comments, but I don't think it was popped up on the screen, but I think this comment is related to healthcare. Right? So who's already seeking out alternative healthcare stuff? Who's seeking out functional medicine? Who's seeking out alternative routes, than simply just staying in the mothership, if you will, just the, urgent care kind of cycle. You want to find people that are already kind of seeking those alternative services out. Those are going to be your early adopters, right? Because they're already, then, the people that are just kind of going day by day, they're not going to be looking. And so they're never going to look to even find you, right? So early adopters is a really important thing to consider that Andrew's talking about related to beachhead. The other one was, it's too disruptive. Well, I think there you have to be able to explain things in a way that conveys trust, right? Because you're asking people to do something that they're uncomfortable with, that's too foreign to them. So you're going to have to, how do you build that trust? How do you build that story? Is it partnerships? Is it, I don't know. Is it humanizing your brand almost, right? We see a lot of brands just kind of staying away from the people, but I think if you bring people into the story, other people want to know who's behind this. I think that can convey trust. So there's lots of things you can do on that front. Do we have any more, or should we keep going?
I will say, so Dave the Wave is just sharing. Let me go back up to that comment there. He just had kind of a comical comment, and we dove into a little bit in the chat, but never build what the sales team claims customers will buy. And then I said, maybe good ideas can come from anywhere, but then he just shared like everything they've tried with the sales team over the past, 35 years, looks like it's been a while, just never panned out. Like they, share the idea with the dev team. Hey, they kind of work on it, but it just never ends up working out. Any kind of comments around that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, if you've been in the sales side long enough, you get to realize that, well, you debrief. Wow, you got to tell the CEO, why'd you lose that deal? You got to come up with some reason, right? So there's a couple competing, things going on that distorts truth, right? One is, I'm the sales prospect and I just want to get off this call. It's like, I'm not ready to buy. How do I get out? I'm just looking for an excuse. So you'll find that the prospects will be just giving excuses to get off sales calls. And you'll also find the sales guy or salesperson is trying to like, convey internally some reason why these deals aren't closing. right? And there's obvious disconnects all along the way there. Maybe we're not targeting the right people at the right time. Maybe they don't have the problems that we think they have. Maybe the value we're trying to deliver either the story's right, not right, or we don't understand the real what they're trying to achieve, or our product can't help them get there. Right? There's a lot to unpack around just that one comment right there. But
yeah, I would say like this perpetuates from what I've seen in early stage and like Series A plus companies that are scaling, where you have people from a different market segment who have different expectations and different value, and ultimately the solution doesn't stack up. So it might be true where they actually need some specific things, but you're not serving that market yet and you're trying to get into it. So that's kind of an answer, a question that you have to answer internally of, hey, is this on our roadmap? And that's where, next month we talk about rapid prototyping, where if it is something that your business wants to go into and you see that becoming core and you have identified that already, you could come back with a 1-2 screen prototype saying, hey, here's what we're thinking, right? You don't build anything into the platform, but you work alongside the product team and say, hey, we think this is a value prop. Maybe they did a quick interview with them, or maybe some other folks, and you come back and you try to get commitment early, right? You start to do demand testing before you build it. And that's how you would use it in like an established product to try and show them, right? Confirm the problem, show them what it could potentially look like, and then get them to sign on, even if it's not ready, because you know that when the time is ready, and if you reach out, Dave, that it's never going to close, right? It's going to be something else. So unless you can build these small yeses and confirmations along the way and get them to say, yeah, in 3 months when it's ready, we'll sign a letter of intent. It's probably, just smoke and mirrors.
Yeah. When we talk about we're talking B2B right now, in that space, whether you're doing new product or existing product, trying to find out what the next thing is going to be for you, what Andrew's talking about is this concept of like almost a pilot group of customers, right? Like what you have might be a really good fit for these early adopters or for this segment. Maybe it's SMB, or it's, there's not as complex environments, for instance, right? It might be a fit for some segment, and another segment might actually need something else, but you also don't want to build to satisfy one whale, right? Or one customer. What you want to do is solve for the market, solve for that next segment. So whether it's a new product or existing product, what we'll often do is try to do like early adopter program, right? Where it's like, hey, we're going to build this next thing, or planning to build this next thing. If you're along for the ride, do you want to be, some scarcity? Do you want to be one of the 3 companies you work closely with that helps shape and form this thing, right? You get to put your fingerprints on it, make sure it meets your needs, but you also, as a company, you get validation that, hey, the companies actually value this. Maybe they pay up front for that. There's a lot of different ways to solve for these multiple customer segment aspects, but you do need to be aware about, is the context different? Or are they giving just excuses, right? Are their needs actually different, or is there another reason why I'm hearing this stuff? So funnel stage, anything else, Jacob?
No, I just Gazi, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but he was just asking about where to find customers to interview or like how to do surveys. So I just shared a previous video that we've done about customer research and mentioned Respondent is a great place. If you don't know where to find customers, respondent.io, I put the link in the chat, is a great place to find them if you're looking at creating a new idea and don't have that network on your own. And one thing to mention too, tomorrow we're going to have a live stream again with Ryan and Robert, all about surveys. So Gazi, as you're thinking through surveys, I would come join us tomorrow again, because we're going to talk about how surveys can be a little misleading sometimes, and they're really hard to do well. They can be useful, and we'll talk about when they can be tomorrow. So hopefully you can join us again. Otherwise, it'll be recorded and up on our channel. So yeah, that's all I wanted to share.
Yeah, great. When we're talking about existing products in this example here, you really want to think about funnel stages. Now, if you're doing a new product, you're really probably mostly focused on the very first part of this, and even skipping awareness, because awareness is acquisition is more important than awareness, and you can grow into that. But the key thing you want to ask yourself is, there's this concept that really in any one system, if you think this as a funnel, right? Top of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. In any funnel, in any one system, there's always one constraint and only one bottleneck at one time. So the question you want to be asking yourself is, hey, where's the current bottleneck in the flow at this current moment in time? And that's where you want to go focus on trying to solve for. If it's acquisition, that's going to lead you down, conversions. Why aren't they becoming customers? What are their hesitations? Value prop pricing. You're going to be doing a lot of that kind of work. You're going to be doing probably a lot of data stuff on conversions and Google Analytics and stuff like that. Signups, payments. If you have an existing product, you're probably looking more in the revenue and retention. Maybe you have people are signing up, it seems to be really resonating, people paying, and then like our NPS score is really low, right? Like people are not happy with it, or they fall off real quick. They only stay for a week and they leave. They only stay for a day and they leave, or a month or whatever that is. Why are people falling off? And I think the funnel is a helpful mental model to help you ask better questions. Hey, where should I zoom in? Where are people falling off? Why are they falling off? Right? You're going to start with quant. You're going to start with whatever data you have to figure out where but figuring that out, whether you're looking at your mixed panel data or whatever you're looking at, you're going to figure out where people are getting stuck. That's the first thing, and then you want to figure out why. Right? Maybe you figure out that you need to change and you need to reimagine this experience. This key part of the experience. Maybe onboarding is really rough. Maybe like people get a certain distance, but then they just lose the habit. So how do you help them pull it closer into their lives or remind them, or lots of things to think about here. And then referral. If people are actually having success, how do you help them promote that and share that with everybody else? And you can test for that, right? We're talking about testing. So you can test for if on the referral side, if people will share. Would you be willing to share this? Lots of things you can do depending on the different stages of the funnel. Andrew, any other thoughts?
No, I think you covered it good. Yeah, I don't have any other thoughts there.
What we're trying to do today is just trying to provide you a couple of these lenses to look through. What context are you in? What stage of the funnel are people at? The type of research, we kind of talked about this already, but you want to figure out, you want to bounce between these things. When you're doing testing, you can do testing in a couple ways. You can do qualitative testing, where we'll actually, it's one thing to talk about a new feature or a new product concept. It doesn't work. We see it all the time, Andrew, where it just, if you talk about a concept, it doesn't click until you show it to them. So I think one of the things we want to be pulling into this, market testing or demand testing are going to be designs, right? Like it's our job as innovators to imagine the future, to paint the picture, to help them pull them into like a new future that they're excited about. So I think designs, and I don't care if it's lo-fi or hi-fi yet, but pull that into these conversations. When I say conversations, that's like qualitative. To understand, hey, how would this make life better for you? How would you use this? What would your hesitations be? Trying to understand the customer and their use case from a qualitative perspective, and then actually go test that, right? We talked about a bunch of different ways: fake doors, landing page tests, payment tests, and you want to test from a quantitative or behavioral standpoint. How many people would actually engage in this if we put it in front of them?
Yeah, and I think back to what you were saying, Ryan, about as we talked about funnel stage, a lot of times those start with the quantitative, right? We're looking at metrics, we're looking at mixed panel, we're looking at other instrumentation we have in place, and then we're figuring out, well, why, right? Let's go figure out why we're having such a drop off in onboarding, or why, people are coming in and they're not fully becoming activated users. They're not getting to that aha moment or creating that first piece of content or an event, whatever your metric might be. Let's go figure out why, right? Is it the software? Is it is it the implications? Like, are people just losing interest? Is the motivation not high enough? And so I think like combining these two are really good lenses to look at, because if you looked at onboarding and it told you, hey, onboarding's bad, and you never talked to a user, you never observed what they were doing and why they thought, something, certain data would go a certain place, you'd be in your own vacuum, right? And you really want to test and bring that sort of research to to them, understand what they're doing, and kind of use this iterative mindset to go and make things better with the full picture of both sides.
Awesome. We have a couple of comments here. I know it's hard. User docs. I'm not sure your real name, but thanks for joining us. You have some great kind of like a series of statements and then some questions here that we can help with. I also want to call out David Kane's joined the chat. Apparently can juggle up to 5 objects, and he's juggled flaming torches and machetes. So I just want to give a shout out to David. Like, super awesome to see that in the chat today. And welcome Stephanie.
Props to David. Send us a picture.
Yeah, welcome Stephanie as well. She was checking to make sure if the chat was real. Like, yep, we are real people. Here we are. So hello Stephanie and welcome. Yeah, James commented that David needs to be careful when he juggles, so we agree. All right, so I'm going to jump back I'm going to do my best to get these comments in order here. So user docs is asking, I have limited adoption among my pilot users. I believe this to be in part because the solution is very rough, and in part because I'm targeting the wrong audience. Oh wait, actually I missed the first comment. My bad. I'll go backwards. So many comments here. Here we go. I have identified a problem and validated the problem exists with multiple companies. I built an alpha product and I'm working on a beta. Here's the 2 problems. All right, here we go. So the first problem was, go back to it again. I have limited adoption among pilot users. I believe this because the solution is very rough and I'm targeting the wrong audience. Number 2, I've found through exploration that my target market frequently doesn't have a budget or the attitude to pitch my solution internally. And so the next thing is I'm interested in repositioning my product primarily by changing the market I'm targeting. And so the question is, I'd like to understand how to identify the correct audience for my solution and how to get some users to talk in those audiences. Oh, hello. He says he shares his name. His name's John Davenport. Not sure why I came up with my company channel. All good. So, do you want me to step back on any of those comments? But he wants to understand how to identify the correct audience for the solution and how to get users to talk to in those audiences.
I guess I'll go. Thanks so much. Name again, John. Thank you so much for sharing this. This is great. Like the thing we look forward to, Andrew and I look forward to, Jacob looks forward to going on these calls is, we can talk to ourselves and share slides, but we don't know who's listening, and we really want to provide value in these conversations. It's open office hours. So thank you for asking questions and really making it a conversation for us. A couple things here. One, first of all, great job getting out there and like stepping out of fear and stepping into, really making stuff happen. You already got a product that's out there. You got pilot users signed up. So like, I'm just excited for the, tenacity you're showing, and you're just kind of making stuff happen. You're hustling, right? That's number one. We see that missing a lot of times. People just stay in pitch deck land, but I can already tell you're trying to make stuff happen. So that's fantastic. Limited adoption in your pilot users. I guess one question is, you're asking, hey, should I stay in that group of pilot users or should I switch my market segment? I don't know. The question you might ask before you kind of abandon that pilot group, you might think about asking them, or Andrew, what questions might you think about helping them out with is, hey, when's the last time you reached for this, right? And when did you pick this up? Because what you really want to understand is situationally, your product is fitting into a larger ecosystem, a larger environment, right? Their life is not about your product. Their life is about these other things. So you want to understand where it's fitting in their world when they reach for it. So when's the last time you reached for it? Tell me what was going on, right? What happened before that? What were you trying to do? You want to really understand that context and that use case. And then you could ask them a similar question, like, when you're not reaching for my product, what are you reaching for? Oh, interesting, right? And maybe you find out that like they encounter this situation quite often. It's just you're just not the right fit for some other reason. They're reaching for these other things. Maybe this situation or context, this challenge happens a lot. But maybe the other hand is like, maybe it doesn't happen that often. And if that's the case, then I would really think about changing the market segment. Then if they're not having this problem very often. One thing we do talk about in the early adopter kind of profile is they're aware of they have a problem, that they're trying to solve the problem, frequency of use, like how often does this happen to them, and urgency, like how bad does it hurt, right? You kind of want to look through those kinds of lenses when you're looking at which market segment do I go after. And of course, there's other things like market size, strategic direction, like, or strategic position. If I go after this market segment, could it expand? Would those success stories expand to be reputable to these other customer segments, or would it be kind of a one and done, like that's it, I can't really grow from there? So there's a lot to unpack on customer segmentation and where you dive deep. But I think before you abandon that pilot group you have, I would work to understand their context that your product is fitting in, because you're fitting in an ecosystem into their environment. Andrew?
Yeah, I think you said it best. I mean, it sounds like you're with a B2B offering. So just understanding, what's it costing them today if they do nothing, right? Like if they don't turn to anything, like how big is the problem? Is it okay? Is it just like, is it, hey, it's efficiency play, but it's not really decreasing, risk. It's not really decreasing, their costs or increasing revenue or any of those like business drivers. Maybe it is a different segment, right? That you can feel where the find where the pain is more and where the impact of your product and solution could be bigger. So I think unfortunate answer is it depends. And I think those answers and those insights, that context is really important. So then if you get answers for that, you can almost go to the same sort of questioning for your new audiences, right? And you can use dimensions like how big is the market opportunity? Who do you have, like we talked about before, who do you have access to in that market that you could learn really quickly from? Because like that network is a competitive advantage where you can go in and talk to decision makers or talk to people around how they're trying to solve it and get that intel. With lean startup, the startups who learn the fastest are the ones who usually stay around. And so figuring out like how can you learn faster rather than iterating the product, how could you reposition this to that target audience is important, which is your question. So figuring out like, is there nothing here in your existing audience, and then starting to chart out and create like a rubric for how you would analyze the different audiences. Hey, who else do you know has this? Like, what's your intuition say? And then how could you back that up with actual evidence and go have those conversations around almost like sequentially listing, okay, if this isn't the beachhead, who might be? Who do I have a competitive advantage in? Where's the market big? Where's the problem the biggest? And start to pin those against each other.
And I'll pull up one of the other ones from John here. The reason I signed up for this session is because the message resonated with me about demand testing. John's saying, I found people respond well to my problem statement and my solution, but don't adopt the product well. And I think the first thing that Andrew's going to, and I totally agree, is that people will say things all the time that I like this, oh, great idea, right? And like, for those who've been in startups, failing is really hard. I've failed at startup. I was in it for way too long, realizing that the pilot customers I had were free, and so we see that. We see a lot of let's do a free pilot. Is there value in that, really? I mean, I think that sometimes they're just leading the startup along just to see where it might go. But it's also, you got to be fair to yourself as an entrepreneur. Is, do people actually want this? They say they do. Prove it, right? Make sure that, I think your pilots should be. We'll talk about here. Let's skip to this slide right here. Currency ladder, right? Talk about testing. I think this is a really, really important thing to provide. John, for you, and maybe hopefully for others as well. And this is exactly what Andrew was talking about in the video. Is value. How do you determine value? How do you test for value? And we use a currency ladder. The idea is that there's money, right? A little money, a lot of money. There's data. Data is, me providing you my email address. That's not very valuable. But me providing you like my social security number to do a background check on me or something like that, like that's a really high currency level, right? Like a credit card, that kind of stuff, right? Reputation. If someone's referring you to are they referring you socially down the ladder, right? Oh, I'll refer you down or to a peer. But if they're referring you up the chain in a B2B scenario, hey, we're going to have a meeting with the CEO. Someone's pulling you up the chain. that's really high currency, right? That means a lot. That means they really believe in this and they're willing to risk their reputation and put their name on it, right? So how are you testing in these pilot environments for value? And I think giving stuff away for free isn't good, is not a fair deal. I think that you want to get the questions like, hey, maybe your product is not what they need yet, but maybe help reimagine it with me, right? What are you trying to accomplish? What's that worth? If you could get from here to there, what's that worth to you, right? What impact would that have on the business? Why not? Why now? You want to understand urgency. Why not wait 6 months, right? You want to understand if they're actually motivated to do this. What value would that have? And then you want to, put your designs together, put a proposal together with some dollar amounts, and there's different ways. And Andrew mentioned in the B2B context, letters of intent, right? Hey, whether it's a new product or a new feature, will they sign the line? Yeah, I'll be willing to sign a document that says I'll pay 10 grand a month, 20 grand a month, whatever that is, for this if you build it, right? And that's great. That's something, right? It's not cash, but that's okay. There's different ways to test in these pilot environments for value.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've come across too is you might have some forward-thinking customers that know that there's a problem today, but know that there is going to be a bigger problem as they plan to grow. So their growth goals in 6-12 months, they could see that problem magnifying. So you're trying to figure out, volume today, hey, it might be a decent sized problem. They're willing to solve it. But based on their trajectory and their plans for growth, like this is going to become an even bigger problem for them. So thinking about like the implications today and moving forward, I think is important as you build that business case.
Good. And John's got one last question here. He's saying that his idea is about screenshot collection, and he's talking about the big incumbent in this market as traditional screenshot collection, and the habit built up in my segment is to reach for manual. Habit's a really big thing to break. I think we don't want to underestimate the force of that. So for you to help to break someone's habit, you've talked about the fog model, Andrew, or whatever, but really it's about how do we lower the, to get adoption, there's a couple different variables. One is motivation, right? Like how motivated are they to solve it? And in screenshot collection, I don't know, motivation may be low, but the manual screenshot stuff, the friction to that will be pretty high, right? Like I have to click where to drag, and I have to do this copy thing, then I have to paste it somewhere. It's in my clipboard, and if I copy something else, I lose it. Where do I go paste it? So there is something there where it might be, maybe there is an opportunity to make it easier. I don't know, but we think about those two dimensions, motivation and friction, right? How do you reduce friction and make something super easy to do for adoption, or find people that are highly motivated, and that becomes a customer segmentation question.
Yeah, I think like part of it is understanding, you mentioned this before, Ryan, like understanding the journey someone's on. What do they do before they take a screenshot? How do they know when they're going to take one? What happens after that? And I think understanding that journey could unlock like, well, actually, I want to take it locally because I want to back up. I want to be able to look through this backup locally of whatever, or I save my screenshots to this cloud link in Dropbox and I'm able to access all of them wherever I go. If there's some reason you need to access it, like understanding why maybe they're tied to their existing, that pull back to their existing solution, or maybe it is just good enough, right? I think like unless you can come up with a specific context and a specific reason or benefit to them using your tool over that, right? Like the individual screenshots alone, and obviously we don't have the full context, John, so we're kind of spitballing here, but the individual benefits alone of me, doing my short key and screenshotting it and dropping a link, my Dropbox link somewhere or Cloud App link, not a huge ton of value. But if there's this bigger thread where you can share with your team and you can, I'm not sure exactly what the use case is, that might pull them to adopt your solution. I know we've done that, just thinking about our screenshots. Like we used Cloud App for a while. We're doing more videos now, so we're actually using Loom, where like our team has access to videos and things like that. So it might be something to think about, like what else could be there to entice people and motivate them to increase that, so that they do use it and adopt it. And sometimes that's driven by management, right? Like it's not individual team members. It could be potentially, driven by leaders of the team or heads of a team.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the big takeaways here that we hope you're walking away with is, there's two perspectives, let's say. One perspective, which most of us fall into, and guilty, all of us do, is looking at the world. We're always looking at the world through lenses, right? And we can look at the world through our company lens or through our product lens, in which we think it's all about the product. It's all, and it's really not. I think I challenge that view. We would both say, hey, the one of the best lenses you could have is actually through your customer's lens. And that's really immersing yourself in their context, in their environment, in their workflows. Kind of like to Andrew's point, they're doing screenshots for a reason. And what's the bigger zoom out view here about different contexts, right? Like one example is like on Zoom calls, I find myself doing this. On Zoom calls, I try to grab screenshots for different reasons. One, I want to like save that for later, but two, I'm trying to like get pictures of the team when they're all excited, to get the team excited later. Like there's a bunch of different, tons of use cases. And it really becomes about more than just the functional aspect of a screenshot. It becomes about, hey, there's a social aspect of sharing or async work, right? And these other tools, how are they communicating that? Where does that go? Is that going to Slack? Is that going to Twitter, whatever? There's all these different aspects, but we really want to encourage you to change the lens to be not just product focused, but looking through the lens of the customer. And that way you can understand the bigger picture, the value of what they're trying to accomplish to them, where you fit in their world, the competitors, or what else they're reaching for, and how you can create something new that's valuable to them, that you can even price at in a way that makes sense to them, that they're willing to pull into their life, break that habit, change what they're doing now, and do something different, right? That's what demand testing is all about, is will people change their behavior, and how can we prove that?
Love it. Awesome. Hey folks, we're going to wrap it up. I kind of shared that in the chat while Ryan was talking. We're kind of at time, top of the hour here. Awesome questions, awesome discussion today. This was a lot of fun. I know Ryan brought it up before, like this is why we're here. We're here to like answer your specific questions, because we can, talk all day to ourselves, but the real thing is like actually helping people with specific problems within context, all that kind of stuff. And we look forward to doing this more often. Right now we do this type of thing about once a month for open office hours, but we have Exploring Product tomorrow as well. So join us for that. We'll be talking about why you don't always want to trust your product surveys, and what does that mean and why. And so when are they useful? When do you use them? All that kind of stuff. So it'll be super fun. Ryan will be back on with us, and Robert will be joining us as well. And we've been doing that show for about a year now. So Exploring Product, it's more product focused, not so much full scope startup, definitely more product, like customer research, problem discovery, expanding your product. What does that look like? Innovation, all that kind of stuff. All those conversations around product specifically. So love it. Andrew or Ryan, is there anything else you want to share? I'm going to share, actually, if you're just joining us now, be sure to check out this discussion as part of our series called Startup Foundations. So I have the link. I did put the link in the chat before, but I'll put it on the screen again. But also, I don't know if John, if you saw this link before, but be sure to also check out on our website, if you go to headway.io in the resources page, we also have the Founder's Mindset, which is, I think, heavily related to Startup Foundations. It's more theoretical on like how to approach like making decisions as a founder. And I think that's just as helpful as the Startup Foundation series. So Andrew, Ryan, anything else you want to share?
I don't think so. Thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, they both said it is fun. Great to dig in and solve some problems, and yeah, looking forward to it. Next month is rapid prototyping. So we'll actually talk about tools, methods, things you can do to, when you have ideas for new products or you have ideas for new revenue streams, how can you create that feedback loop with customers before you go, spend lots of time and money building the real thing. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks again, everybody. Take care and have a great week.